Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. It looks like everything is streaming. I'll keep an eye on it, see what's up here. Looks like it has started streaming and should be coming up in just a minute. Yep, there we go. And let me see, watching live should be good. Okay, I want to show you my screen, and my screen's going to come up for you in just a minute here. It's going to come up in a window that you can take and scoot it to the other screen if you want. Okay. And make sure I'm good to go. I should like load up my, maybe that's what I'll do. I'll load up my laptop to keep an eye on the stream. All right, those of you that are online should be good to go. I should have audio back up and running now. Just send me a message if something happens again, okay? Just send me a message over there. So you didn't miss a whole lot. I was just talking about how you can contact me. My batteries died. I have rechargeable batteries, and 3 sets died in a row. I recommend everybody to take a look at the syllabus. This is going to give you an overview of all the different policies that we have. If you want to download an offline copy, here's the workload by week. All right, so let's quickly have a look at the syllabus. I'm just going to kind of skim through it. It has a lot of the same information. This is the course syllabus, kind of a lot of the same information, but I want to make sure that we're all on the same page. Those of you that are in the class, if you have questions, just ask as well. This is basic stuff. We'll dig into some of the other stuff here in a few minutes. So the texts, let me address the text. I have multiple emails out to people, unless they have fixed it, which I doubt that they have. They should be showing up right here in red shelf. You should be able to click on that. Hey, there it is. So there is the web development programming 2, and if you click on course materials, you're going to see the designing the user interface and the design of everyday things. Those are required texts that you need to read. These are opt-out texts. So right at the moment, you are opted into those. That means that if you don't decide you want these and you forget to opt out, you're going to be charged for them. So if you've already purchased these, immediately you want to go in and you want to opt out of using the ebooks, okay? You'll get several emails on that as well, which will be good. There are supposed to be 2 optional books in here as well. They don't seem to be here yet, but I'm sure that they will be soon. Okay, but there's supposed to be 2 optional books in there. Hey, as long as we get the required books, that's all I care about, right? So the required books are up there. I apologize for that delay. They were supposed to be in there last Friday, and they were not, but they're there now. And I think you have until Friday to opt out. So if you're like, well, I think I can find those cheaper, you can try to go out and find them cheaper and get them in by Friday and use the e-textbook between now and then, right? Everybody understand? Now, the optional books are supposed to be opt-in. With the opt-in, that means if you would like to purchase them, you go in and you say, yes, I want a copy of this book, and then they will charge it to your student account. Or you can just look at it. They're older editions. One person, I think Joshua, told me that one of them was going out of print. That's because these books, some of these, they update them like every year. I don't care about the edition. If it's a year or 2 old, trust me, it'll be okay. We don't have to pay full price for the latest edition. It'll be fine. All right. So going back to the syllabus, I'm glad that that's taken care of. There are a lot of other ones out there. I kind of like this Don't Make Me Think, a common sense approach to web usability. It's very similar to designing similar to designing everyday things, the design of everyday things. It's a nice, easy read. You don't have to read it, but it's kind of fun when it comes to the usability aspect of things. You're going to want to download a program called OBS, or you're going to want to use the built-in VidGrid. One of the things that we do to demonstrate our projects is we have to record videos. If you use OBS, it's free. You need to get a YouTube account, and you can either record everything locally and then upload it, or you can live stream like I'm doing right now to your YouTube account. After it's live streamed, then you go back about 15-20 minutes later, your video has been encoded and you're good to go. With VidGrid, it gives us a much more powerful environment to be able to quickly edit our video. Like if we make mistakes, you just kind of keep recording, you can go back and on the fly chop out the mistakes that you made, and then you can share that. I'll show you how to access VidGrid. So I'm going to allow you to either use VidGrid or OBS with YouTube. All right, so you're going to want to download that. You want to play with that, and I'll show you a couple of settings in there that maybe you want to take notes about in a little bit. If you do the live streaming to the YouTube, you need to understand that there's a 24-hour cooldown period before you're allowed to live stream. So you go up, you create it, even if you have a YouTube account, which you do, but you've never set up the live streaming. As soon as you set up the live streaming, a 24-hour cooldown period kicks in, and you have to wait. Okay? Absolutely.
So if we use the OBS, we don't need to configure the YouTube live stream.
You will. Well, if you record, you can do two ways. You can record OBS locally, the video locally, and then upload it to YouTube. Or you can live stream. That's my preference because it cuts down on the steps. I say start streaming and boom, it's up there. I don't have to do anything else once I initially have OBS configured. Does that make sense? Well, we'll walk through it in a few minutes. I'll show you some of the different things you need to do. Okay? And I'll show you VidGrid, and you can play back and forth with both, whichever one you want to do. So you're going to need some virtualization, either VirtualBox or VMware. I will show you how to do that, where to get that. You do have an account up there, or you should have an account up there. If you don't have the account, if you think you don't have it, your username is your FSU email address, the full email address, the @frostburg.edu. Click on Forgot Password, put that in, and you should be able to access VMware and download that for free. Doesn't cost anything. I'm very much about free in this class. You're paying enough for the masters. I'm all about getting quality software to you for free. I typically can get Windows for you, but Microsoft recently shifted away from the platform that they've had for over a decade, and I'm still sorting through exactly how our accounts link to the image. We still have it, but it's called Microsoft Image, where we can download, it's like $100,000 worth of software for free, as long as we don't use it in a production environment. So give me some time to continue to work through that, but it's there. So you want to get that virtualization. Why do I recommend you use virtualization? It gives you a safe environment to play with and experiment with. So you don't have to mess up your own computer. If you're positive that you like a particular solution, install it on your computer. That's fine. But if you're like, I want to try 2 or 3 different things to see which one I like, I highly recommend setting up a virtualized environment. And that way you can install whatever you want inside the virtualized environment. It's a nice safe space, and we don't have to worry about slowing down our own machine with a whole bunch of extra software. So that's why I like it. I put a couple of additional optional text up there. Some of these are getting a little bit old at this point, but they're still valid. There's nothing wrong with old. That's what I tell people all the time. A decade old, that's different. A couple years old, it doesn't really matter. One of the resources I want to draw your attention to is Lynda. If we come to frostburg.edu and we type in Lynda, once we type in Lynda, right here, Lynda campus at FSU, and you can click into this, and there's all kinds of nice tutorials in there for you to be able to quickly kind of get yourself up to speed. So I'm going to kind of go through the lamp architecture. I'll give you different readings, maybe a few videos here and there. But if you need more, Lynda is a quick go-to. They have very advanced tutorials, and they have other very basic tutorials and everything in between. So if you don't understand what I'm saying, or you don't like the materials that I've given you or the videos that I've given you, you all know this. There are thousands of other resources out there, and Lynda is a great place to go to versus YouTube. Everything that's on Lynda is vetted by other experts, so other people, it's a peer-reviewed process, have said, yes, this is a good video, and they allow it onto the platform. It's a paid platform. Versus YouTube, anybody can put stuff up on YouTube, right? So there's no vetting process with YouTube until it's like crowdsourced, and then people give it the thumbs up and thumbs down. But a brand new video you're not going to know about. Okay. Here is a list of development tools. I'll let you kind of have a look at that later. You're going to want to download Android Studio. The current version is 3.4.1. Download that. You're going to want to install that, get that up and running. There is an alternative. The emulator that used to be in Android Studio used to be very slow. And as a workaround, there was a virtualized piece of software called Genymotion. I don't think we need to use Genymotion anymore, but I've left it in there in case you're like, well, it's just so slow. It literally used to be when we were developing our Android app, we would go to push it up and start it, and it would take like 10 minutes to start up through the emulator. Genymotion kind of cut a lot of that out, but now what has happened is Android Studio, that emulator is much better than it used to be. So you can experiment back and forth and play around with what you want, okay? Let me see. Optional. We've got to have a healthy attitude in here. We're all in here to learn. There are going to be times that you're going to get frustrated. There's going to be times that you're going to feel overwhelmed. Please, especially in the first week and a half, communicate with me. If you talk to me and you say, I don't know what to do with this or what direction to go, send me an email, text me, Skype me, whatever, and I'll help you kind of get a direction. That's one of the biggest things to do is once we get that direction, we'll be good to go. All right. So here's the basics, and I'm going to cover it in the syllabus, and then we will go over and kind of look at some different things. I used to have my students do a research paper and a presentation. And I've backed that off to just a research presentation. It has to be a very solid research presentation. So you're going to need to go out. It's going to be 20 to 25 minutes max, all right? I want you to pull a minimum of 10 scholarly peer-reviewed journal articles. Meta knows all about this because she has a nice literature review that she created. And it's going to be about a topic related to web development. Then you're going to put together a very nice presentation for the class, and it's going to be a peer-reviewed presentation, and I'll have a look at it as well. All right? You're going to create an Android or iOS mobile device app. Okay? If you have an iOS device and you want to develop an iOS, that's fine, but you have to have an Apple computer to develop the iOS app. And it's a very small app. I need to stress that. It's a very small, let's get used to it. There's nothing scary about it. It's just another computing platform. And it's an extension, very much an extension of web development. That's why I have it in here. I want you to understand how all of the different apps that we're using on our mobile devices, they're really tied to web development. Some of them actually have a web presence. For example, MyFitnessPal has a web presence that you can go in and everything syncs between your phone and the web presence. There's even games that do that as well. So I want you to be aware of that. You're also going to do a usability study. Now, if you're wondering what usability is, Genymotion is a resource hog, I hear, but it is quicker. He tried it last night. Yeah, it might be a little bit of a hog, but if you have plenty of memory, you should be fine. On the usability study side of things, you can get a whole master's degree in UX design. This is a technical computer science master's degree. However, I want you to have the softness of usability. I want you to begin to understand the importance of thinking of usability during the design phase. So if we're creating an app, or we're creating a website, or we're creating even a standalone piece of software, if we just had the understanding from the get-go that if we focus on usability, it's going to be better for our users, which means it's going to be better for us because there will be less errors in using our application. All right, that's what it comes down to. If we don't think about usability, we're going to have users that are upset. We're going to have users that are going to input data and mess with the integrity of our data sets. We're going to have a drop in the actual usage of our application. So again, there's whole teams at large companies that do nothing but usability, all right? But if we as developers know that it exists, we can start catching some of those more common things. We're not going to be usability experts when we're done. That's not what this is about. It's about you understanding that things can always be improved upon, and there isn't always a reason to change something just because you think it should be changed, right? So that's what we're going to do for the usability study. I say that it can be on the site that you created in 630. I'm going to kind of maybe ditch that statement anywhere that you see 630. We'll just kind of say a good place. For example, you could do it on Canvas. I think Canvas has a wonderful, usable interface, but I think there's improvements. You could do it on Pause, or you could do it on a website that you use often. But you keep hearing me say site, I need you to think of probably a specific process on that site. And I'll give you an example. If you've ever used Amazon or something similar, maybe you just want to focus on adding something to the cart or deleting something from the cart, or how easy is it to find a particular phone number to contact a company, right? A lot of these companies, they probably bury it on purpose, but can you still find the help that you need when you need help? Pause is a great, everybody likes studying Pause because you're very familiar with it and you know that it has a lot of errors. Canvas, again, I think there's some things from a usability standpoint that you could easily have a look at, all right? And I'm open to other things. We're going to have discussions every single week on relevant topics to the course. So this is web development too. So cybersecurity is kind of important. Laws are kind of important. All of the different standards are important. It could be usability. So we're going to throw up different things throughout this 6 weeks, and we're going to have a discussion on these. The point is, I'm going to throw up a topic. You're going to go out and you're going to research that topic, and you're going to pull one paper that you like, and you're going to summarize it. Then you're going to put it up on the discussion board, a link to the article or the article itself and your summary, and then other people are going to review your summary and the paper and make sure that the paper matches your summary. So what does this do? Well, in graduate school, we're at an institute of higher learning, and this is an advanced degree. This gives us the ability each week to read hopefully 4 peer-reviewed journal articles or articles that have been written by experts on a specific topic. This is what we need to do as we move forward, is we need to start thinking outside of the popular media and start seeing what the research says about a topic. What are the actual laws? We need to go straight to the source. So that's what this is going to do for us, and it's a pretty important thing. You're going to have chapter summaries, and these are meant to be 1 pages. And the chapter summaries come from the different readings. So you have 2 books that you have to read. You should not be reading these books word for word. If you're reading the books word for word, it's going to take you a really, really long time. So you need to learn to skim the books. The way you're going to skim a book, especially a textbook, is you're going to open up to chapter, that you say chapter 1. You want to read the introduction. Then you want to flip to the end and you want to read the conclusion. Okay? Then you want to start skimming through and read usually the first paragraph of a section. You want to read that. And usually it's anecdotal stories and case studies after that. just skim through those. If you get the understanding and a gist of what it is, you skip the rest of it. If you need a little bit more information, then you go back and read that. That really reduces the amount of time that you need to be reading, all right? It takes a while to practice that, especially if you're the student. If you have a book, and I look at your book and everything's highlighted all the way through, that doesn't do you a lot of good, right? If you've highlighted everything as important, well, it's everything is important, yes, but we need to pull out of there what the most important key elements are of a particular chapter. That's what the summaries are about. They should not be a burden, all right? Couple hours, 3 hours, absolutely. It's going to take you some time to do it, but they are not meant to be a burden, all right? It's meant to help us reinforce what we're going to do and understand usability. That's primarily what those particular books are about. You need to do peer reviews of the proposals and the different programs and the discussion board. You're going to start with 100 points for that, and then it'll come down. So if you notice in your participation, you already have 100% of those points. If I haven't put it in, you will have 100% of those points. If you don't give good peer-reviewed feedback, I'll take points away from that participation, that particular section. First week, I'm going to give a ton of feedback. As long as you pay attention to that feedback, I'm not going to take a lot of points the first week because we're learning, right? Second week, if you start making the same mistakes, then I'm going to start taking more points. By the third week, I'm crossing my fingers that I don't have to give hardly any feedback because everybody's giving good feedback, and I don't have to take any points from anybody. I have had entire semesters, or a semester where the entire time nobody listened to my feedback. Not nobody, but several students didn't listen to my feedback and they wound up with a 0. They lost a whole letter grade because they didn't pay attention to you need to give better feedback about a person's strengths. When you give feedback in a peer-reviewed environment, it's difficult to give it to your peers. You don't want to offend them. I understand that. However, it's how we become stronger as individuals moving forward. All right? So be prepared to give good constructive feedback, good constructive criticism, and be prepared to accept that. Nobody is telling you that you're a horrible student. And if somebody does tell you that, I want to know, because that's not what this is about. It's about making us stronger students and stronger discussion and giving better feedback to our peers. All right. The last thing that we're going to do is sampling technology demonstrations. There are so many different stacks that are out there. There are so many new technologies that are coming and going. The first thing I'll say is this. All of these stacks, all of these APIs, all of these languages, the 2,000 or 3,000 plus languages that are out there are nothing more than tools to us as computer scientists. We are first and foremost problem solvers. We have to identify what the problem is, then we have to find a solution for the problem, and part of that solution is identifying an appropriate tool for the solution. All right? Sometimes the tool is identified for you, so if you go to work for a particular company that is already using a particular stack, that's what you're stuck with. Maybe eventually you can work some new tools into that particular stack and you can integrate them in. Maybe you'll be able to start from scratch and pick out whatever the most relevant, new, and up-and-coming technology is. All right? However, at the end of the day, we need to realize that there's a lot of different things out there. So, we're going to start with a LAMP stack. That's probably what we're going to do today. Is we'll get up, we'll get a video, we'll get up and running with a virtualized environment. Maybe get our LAMP stack set up, and it'll probably be a WAMP stack instead of a LAMP stack. LAMP is Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. WAMP is Windows, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. We're going to cheat a little bit. I'm not going to have you set up each one of those individually. There's some other things that I have out there, Node.js, Bootstrap, the mean stack. Node.js is part of the mean stack. I'll get it out. I'm going to want you to do some stuff with virtualization. I think it's important for you to play with AWS and Azure if you haven't played with those before. So this is all about going out, playing with a new technology, kind of moving from there. All right. So as you can tell, I have things distributed very evenly. So if you're like, well, I know from the get-go that I'm going to struggle with the Android app. Well, it's only worth 15% of your grade. If you aim to get at least a 50% on that, that only takes you down to a 93. You can still get an A in the class if you work really hard on everything else. So right up front, we can see what the different areas are, how evenly I have these points distributed, so that if you're a little bit weak on one thing, you can make it up elsewhere. At the end of the semester, if somebody has struggled throughout, I'm going to ask you to make sure you're always doing the discussions. I want to ask you to make sure that you're keeping up with the sampling technology. And then I'm going to allow you to put off, if we need, one of the bigger projects, the Android project, the usability, or the, probably not the research presentation, it'll just be the Android or the usability study, okay? The reason I want you to do the academic research presentation is that's a very collaborative thing where we're getting peer-reviewed feedback from everybody, so I want us to be able to kind of go through that. Academic dishonesty, computer misuse, falsification, disruptive behavior, all of that, I'll leave that for you to read later. Okay? Do you have any questions about the general overview of the class? I'll wait and see. Maybe somebody has something. I have several people online. Okay, JC has a question. JC is double dipping. He's at work watching the video. Can you go to the spreadsheet for the workload by week? Yes, I can go over that real quick. It references Totterdale, I believe. Okay, so if we look right here in the beginning, one of the things you have to do is the summary of the Flynn study and the Totterdale summary. All right, so if we come out here to a study that I did, you can find it under Files, or you can click on it here. And this is a usability study that I did for my doctoral a while ago. And what I would like for you to do, this is an unpublished usability study. The individuals that I did this for wanted me to get it published, but I just didn't have time and I did not listen to them. If somebody tells you you should publish something, publish it. All right? So I want you to read this because this is a really good overview of how I want your usability study to look at the end of the semester. Now, mine is really big. You need to remember that this was for a doctoral study. It was an entire class based around usability, all right? It wasn't one project in the class like this is, right? And we spent 15 weeks working on this. We have 6 weeks to work on it here. It's worth 15% of the class. we have a lot of different readings that we have to do and other usability stuff that we have to pay attention to. All right? But this particular paper and the Totterdale paper, I'll come back out to that. Whoops, syllabus. And the Totterdale summary, right here, he published. Dr. Totterdale is down in Florida right now, and he got this published in the International Journal of Technology, Knowledge, and Society. This is a good way to see taking that paper that I had. His looked very much like mine, and the only difference is he went out and he got it published, and it had to go in a very specific format, right? So I would like you to read this as well, and notice how short his is. His is much shorter. His is only 16 pages. It started off as big as mine. When you publish a paper, oftentimes you'll wind up with like 30, 40, 50 pages, but the journal that you're publishing to will only allow 5 pages, 10 pages. So you have to take all of that, and you have to keep cutting it up until you get it down to whatever their maximum size is. And that's what he had to do here. So that would be what we want to do, and that's why I have those assigned. I want you to read them, give a brief summary of them, turn it in, and you'll be good to go. All right? So JC, I'm hoping that answered your question. Should we have access to the submission links under the course summary on Canvas? Yes, you should, but I'll check now. All right, so let me have a look here. Oh, it's not published. That's what it is. Yeah, that's no problem. Publish that. Let me double check all of those. Assignments. Okay, let me see. Publish. Publish. Why isn't there a publish all button? Publish. This is going to freak some people out. Research presentation, usability study, Android app. Boom! It's all published. Okay, there we go. And that's why I liked live streaming this, right? So we have these several people are in there watching at the same time. You are catching stuff, I'm catching stuff. It'll be good to go. I set this up. It was all finished and ready to go over a week ago, and sometimes I miss a few things here and there. All right, so let's maybe have a look at a couple other things real quick, because I think you're getting an idea. You could read over things on your own, but let's kind of go through each one of them a little bit. By Wednesday, we have the week 1 discussion. This is a multi-part discussion. So here's the week 1 discussion on web accessibility. If you have no idea what accessibility is, we're talking about for people that are blind or hearing impaired or otherwise, all right? So one of the first things I would do is watch this video about the importance of obtaining peer-reviewed scholarly articles. It walks you through how I published a paper, and I've published several papers, and the rigorous process that is the peer-reviewed scholarly process, all right? So you're going to go out and you're going to research this, accessibility. You're going to find an academic paper, hopefully, and then you're going to create a new thread right here, and you're going to post the paper in, and then you're going to write a short summary, 500 to 600 words max. If you are a verbose individual, if you like to talk and you like to write, that's great. But we also have to be concise. So 500 to 600 words, because we have a lot of things going on. And I don't want everybody spending every waking moment reading other people's stuff. 500 words is not much. That's one page, double spaced, right? So I want to make it quick for everybody. You need to discuss in your review some strengths of the paper, some weaknesses of the paper. And when I say strengths, I don't want, oh, they did a really good job writing about accessibility. No, no. I want very specific strengths. They did a wonderful job discussing this aspect of accessibility. Okay? And this is why. For example, this is why. So you need 3 of those. And that's usually pretty easy. Then I want 3 weaknesses. Weakness can't be, oh, it could have been longer. No. I don't want these superficial things. We're not in graduate school. This is wide open. You're critiquing another author's paper. They have no idea that you're critiquing it. All right? So you can be very open with this. This is your critique of the paper. So what are 3 weaknesses? Well, while a strength was they discussed this part of accessibility, I think that they missed the mark when they talked about this part of accessibility. All right? Or they didn't take into consideration this particular law, or they didn't take into consideration this particular standard. Whatever it is that you want to put in there, right? Discuss how this topic relates to the class. So this all fits into that 500 words. So I'm kind of telling you what to do, right? This is part of the summary. Discuss how this topic relates to your current and future profession. So we all want to go into computer science, or we're already there. Maybe you work for a government, like a state government, and you had no idea that accessibility was supposed to be part of your website. That's how it relates to it. Whoops. Wow, I'm missing 15% of the market because our website is not accessible. You know, a lot of corporations, smaller corporations, don't have to have accessible websites. They're not mandated to have that. They don't have to have closed captioning. They don't have to have skipped links. They don't have to have alt tags for their images, right? Well, if that's the case and you're a small or medium-sized company, you might be missing a large portion of your audience, your potential audience, because you don't have accessibility for your website, right? So you can talk about that. Formulate 3 questions about the paper topic for your peers to answer. All right, so that's part 1. By Friday then, and if I remember, I'll change the due date, but I make no promises, okay? I'll try to remember to change the due date so you know that it changes, but I promise you it will be available until Friday. You got to review 3 other threads. So you've read 1 paper on accessibility, and you've done a review of it. Now you're going to read 3 other people's threads. You're going to review and comment on the 3 threads. If a thread's already has 3 comments, move on to another thread until there's at least 3 comments under every single thread. That way, everybody has feedback as well. Once you've selected a paper to review, you can always put in there under review, and then you go back and you update that with your actual review, right? You are going to want to read the paper that's associated with the thread, skimming it, right? And address any issues you see with the author's summary. See what I'm wanting you to do? Did they miss something in that original paper? You want to do it polite, informative, in a constructive manner. And then you need to answer the questions. All right? And that's all there is to it. So at the end of the week, every week, you have been exposed to at least 4 articles on accessibility. You have reflected on 4 articles about accessibility, and you've improved your communication skills in an advanced degree, giving constructive feedback to other individuals. This is meant to be fun. It is. I think it's fun. I enjoy reading this stuff. I learn something every single time that I teach this class. And keep in mind, yeah, it's time consuming to you, but I got 35 people in the class. So I got to skim through all this stuff. So I'm putting in a lot of time too. All right? But you got to remember that this is a lot of peer-reviewed stuff. So on this particular thing, I skim. I make sure that you're giving good feedback, especially in the beginning. And then towards the end, you'll notice I won't be giving quite as much feedback because I'm paying attention to other stuff. And that's the goal. Lots of feedback in the beginning, get you shaped up to the way that you should be conducting yourselves as a graduate student, and then we go from there. Okay? So I want to post out there discussions about the questions about the discussions. Yes.
For the week one discussion, you mentioned that the due date is Wednesday.
Yes.
That day should be the date that we upload our paper, right?
Correct.
But the feedback for the other 3 students also on that day, or maybe another
No,
day?
it moves to Friday.
Moves.
Yeah, it will move to Friday. So the question was, part 1 is due on Wednesday. Part 2 is due by Friday. It's going to say it's due. I can only put one due date for discussion boards. But the discussion board will be open until Friday. If I remember, I'll move that due date for you. You're going to send me an email. If somebody remembers to send me an email, I'll go in and I'll move the date. But I have to manually do that. It doesn't automatically. I wish that it did. It doesn't automatically do it. Okay. So we've talked about the usability stuff. All right, let's get into the proposals. By Friday, you have 3 different proposals that you need to complete. Each are fairly short, and I give you some different things. So we'll come into the Android iOS application proposal, and this is going to be posted in the discussion boards because I want your peers to give you feedback on your proposal. And then I'm going to be giving you the final thumbs up, thumbs down, or you're on your own because you don't want to listen to me or your peers. All right? And that's happened before. I've had people who they don't want to listen to their peers, they don't want to listen to me, and they just have a whole ton of extra work that they've created for themselves. All right? So this is going to be a multi-part as well. Notice there's 2 parts. Part 1 for each of these proposals is due on Friday. So you have plenty of time to see what you need to do. You will be creating an Android or an iOS application. This is just thinking about what I want to do. You want to create something that you've always wanted to implement. It could be a game. It could be some kind of a tracker, right? It could be, I don't know, whatever you want. However, I want you to use at least a few advanced features, such as geolocation, an accelerometer. You got to use an external database. So I want you to communicate with an external database. You can communicate with the internal database, the SQLite, but I want you to communicate with an external as well. By the way, there's a very nice rubric for the final project. This is just a proposal. For the final project, if you can't get the external database, you just say, I couldn't get it, and you lose the 10% for that grade. Does that make sense? That's why I supply you with these rubrics. Maybe you want to use the camera, maybe you want to use a microphone. You don't have to use them all, but I want you to use something that makes your application, unique. We know that all the smartphones have cameras, they have mics, they have accelerometers, they have geolocation, they have thumbprint. You can look into that API. So how do you know what some of the features are? Well, you need to read the specification for Android. Now, you don't want to read the whole specification, so let's say I want to use the camera. There's an API for that. So you type in Android camera API, and you learn how to call up the camera. And you learn how to put the take a photo button, right? That's how we'll move forward with that stuff. You should use some kind of simple analytics, right? You could do an AR project. Many of you may not know this about me, but I think there's two big technologies that are going to be the winners over the next 5 years. One of them is augmented reality. Why virtual reality is really super cool for gamers, augmented reality is much more practical for everybody else. There are some wonderful augmented reality apps that are out there now for mechanics, to doctors, to the everyday user. You know, think of you're out in a city that you're unfamiliar with and you need to get somewhere, but there's a bunch of skyscrapers in the way. Well, you can just pull up Yelp or one of the other augmented reality and look around and it'll tell you exactly where you need to go. Or Skyview, if you're interested in space and you want to know what the different constellations are or the different planets are, you can pull up Skyview, hold it up into the sky and look around and it will show you where that is with an overlay of the different labels into the sky that you actually see. Of course, you don't have to do something that sophisticated. You could do something as simple as a little AR game using Unity. I don't mind if you use a framework like that. You could use the Unity framework to build an AR project and push it out to Android. I said the Android Studio, but you can use a different one. You can use something different if you want. I want you to be creative because one of the things about the graduate program that's very important is that you are being creative. You're finding something unique to do. And it's okay if you don't get it finished. You're not, I'm going to tell you right now, whatever you dream up, you're probably not going to get it all done. And that's okay. Again, I'm cramming a lot of stuff into this class, but we still only have 6 weeks. Right? All right. So the first step, you got to identify that project. You need to create a proposal. You need to place it on Canvas under the discussion. Your proposal is going to be peer reviewed. Remember, we only have 6 weeks. Proposals should be placed in the comments. Please don't put an MS Word document up because that's extra steps for everybody to have to open your document. So you can make your proposal in Word and then copy and paste it into the comments on the discussion board so we can just kind of review it, right? There's a proposal help here. The full directions of the rubric for the final product can be found under Files, and it's under the final thing that's up there. But if you click on this proposal help, probably makes a lot more sense now that everything's published out there. If we click on this proposal help, notice I just put them all together. So when you look at proposal help under each one of the proposals, it's this exact same document. So I just put them together. So we were doing the Android project. So proposal goes, introduction. What's your idea? How is this a cool idea to you? Meaning, what is it? Why is it going to drive you to completion? Is this your multi-million-dollar idea? You're going to be done this and you're going to keep working on it afterwards, right? I want you to put a general timeline in. Beginning's pretty easy. Proposal due Friday, reviews due by next Tuesday, final approval from Flynn next Friday or Thursday. At that point, as soon as you get the final approval, you can officially start creating and working on all of this, right? Then I want you to do the levels of sophistication. For the Android iOS project, what type of app do you intend to develop? Why do you want to develop this, right? What is it? Why do you want to do it? How will this be helpful to you in the future? You should pick something that you can do to enjoy, continue and develop afterwards. What is the minimal, optimal, and utopian levels, right? What is the absolute bare minimum that I'm going to get implemented? What's the optimal to make it actually feel like an app that I would like to show people? And what's the utopian? You know you're not going to get the utopian most likely. What features do you plan on using, right? You can even do like a SketchUp. How are you going to do some basics? How am I going to get to the external? What am I going to use for the internal? How is this going to impact my end user? How is my app going to impact humanity? Because, that's what we do as computer scientists. I'm not sure there's another field that's had a greater impact on humanity than computer science. Think about it. We've mapped the human DNA. Doctors use this on a regular basis to do analytics and create new things to detect cancer. Engineers have all kinds of wonderful software to drive their hardware. The list goes on and on. We've had a dramatic impact on humanity. So how is your Android project going to impact humanity? Right? So think about that. I then want you to briefly discuss, that goes up here with the research presentation. Then I want you to sum it all up. What's your conclusion, right? How many hours do you think this is going to take overall? So on and so forth. And I'll let you kind of read through the other ones, but maybe I'll briefly go through it. For the usability, you need to pick a portion of a site, an app, or a user interface. The biggest mistake people make is they say, I'm going to do a usability study on Amazon. They already have a team of 15 people that all they do is think about usability. They spend millions of dollars a year on research and making sure that everything is streamlined, right? How are you going to do all of Amazon in 6 weeks, right? So you need to think about something specific on a website. And it can be if you're like, oh, that's too simple, I'll tell you if it's too simple, right? Because you wouldn't believe everything that goes into it. By the time you're done collecting feedback from people and things of that nature, it's a lot, all right? What instruments do you plan on using to help you complete the study? Well, you can find the different instruments in the Designing the User Interface, and you'll see myself and Dr. Totterdale talk about different instruments that we've used. You could use a survey as an instrument, but you need to be careful because that is not a good way to do usability research. A much better way to do usability research is to sit down with somebody, 5 or 10 people, create a script, and ask them to walk through what you want to do. It takes 5-10 minutes for each person. If you get 5 people in the room, and then you collect their feedback. So it's much more of a pilot study, small group of individuals. That's a great way to collect some things. Then how are you going to organize everything that you've created, right? How are you going to present that data? That's going to be an instrument type thing. There's some places in the book. I can get you some other things as well. And then you want to hypothesize. You want to create hypothesis because I need you to go out and think about what I'm going to do, where I'm going to do it. What do you think you're going to uncover during your usability study? Hypothesize. It's going to stink, or they're going to have problems with this. You never know. The more people we get on board looking at something, the more flaws that we find. The idea behind usability is to make it as user-friendly to the most amount of people. There's always going to be that one person that's like, no, I don't think that's right. Right? But if we can get it friendly and usable to 99% of our audience, we're going to be good. Right? All right, so for the research presentation, the last thing here, you want to pick a topic that interests you. Got to be around web development, but that's huge. It could be one of the topics that we talk about initially through the discussion boards. It could be about the future of web. I don't know what the future of web is. I have ideas. I think a voice user interaction is going to be huge. Is that still web-based? Yeah, it can still be web-based. I think the more intelligent and the better these different devices and assistants that we have, the more people are going to use voice interaction. So you could do something on that. What about hand gestures? What about augmented reality? What about gaming in the web? What about this whole streaming of these new streaming services that are coming up with gaming? That's still web development. We still have a lot of web development that's going to go into making that stuff happen. You can look at what the latest tools are, the beta tools that are out there from Microsoft and Twitter. It's a little difficult to be able to do research on those, see how well they're accepted. But you can find performance, peer-reviewed things on everything from databases to technology stacks. All right? You have to have 10 peer-reviewed journal articles at the end of the day. For this particular presentation, or this particular proposal, I apologize, you must have 3 to 5 peer-reviewed papers that you've already pulled. You need to give a quick summary of each one of those. That's going to be the start of the annotated bibliography. You're going to have a milestone for your research presentation where you're going to have at least 10 peer-reviewed or more in your annotated bibliography. All right? So, questions about the proposals? Hearing none.
I have a question.
Sure.
Sorry. Can you go back to the presentation proposal?
Yes. I've been asked to go back to the presentation proposal.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So we have to read around 10 papers for the whole presentation.
By the time you get to your presentation, yes.
Okay, but for the like the PowerPoint slides, we only need to pick 3 to 5 to summarize them.
No, that's incorrect. For the proposal, I want you to have already begun researching your subject matter, okay? So I want you to have 3 to 5 in your proposal, okay? By the time you get to the actual presentation in 4 weeks, then you have to have 10 or more supporting what you're saying in your presentation.
So do I need to include everything which mentioned in the paper, academic paper, or I can grab some like important points?
So the question is, do I have to mention everything in the paper? The answer is no. You read the paper, and even if there's only one point that you get out of that paper, and it's valid to what you're wanting to say and present in your research presentation, you then put that into your presentation and you put it into your citations, right, into your works cited. You're going to have an annotated bibliography. And on that annotated bibliography, you want to write in every single peer-reviewed paper that you have read. That doesn't mean that it's going to wind up in your final presentation. The only thing that needs to wind up in your final presentation are the different papers that you use to get the ideas out of, right? We almost always read more, but it's important to keep that annotated bibliography because we never know when we're going to want to go back to it. So an annotated bibliography is, we put in APA format or whatever format we're going to use, the information, the author, the title, what journal it came from, yada, yada, yada. And then a 3 to 4 sentence summary of the paper. That's it. 3 to 4 sentences. This doesn't seem like a big deal now because you're only going to have 10 or 20 sources on there, right? When you're writing your dissertation, if you go on for your doctorate and you're writing your dissertation, you might have 100 or 200 articles that you've read for that dissertation. And you're not going to be able to keep everything straight. But if you have an annotated bibliography, you can scan through that annotated bibliography. You have this idea, I know somewhere I read about Web accessibility. If you did your annotated bibliography right, it's your own mind, it's your words. You can search through that and you're like, there it is, and then you can go back out and grab the paper and reread the paper. So that's why I want you to do that. This is about, honestly, because we can keep 10 papers or so straight in our mind. It's more about preparing you for doing bigger research later on down the road. And while you may not have aspirations to get a doctorate, some people do, and you never know when you're going to wind up doing research. So if we get some of these habits in place now, it's better for us later down the road. Sound good?
Another question is for the Android application. So we need to implement all the functions we mentioned in the proposal. If we don't have enough time, like this function, I cannot implement it.
So the question is, do we have to implement all of the functions that are in Android? So do we have to do something for the camera and the microphone and the accelerometer? The answer is no.
No, I mean, like if I want to do an AR project and I have several features,
Right.
and I don't have enough time, so I just implement some of them. The rest of partial implementation.
Well, so that's why we're going to do that in the proposal. We're going to say we want to be realistic with ourselves, right? This is the bare minimum. There's no way I'm turning in a project if I don't get these features implemented. I hope to get these implemented, right? And it would be great if I got all of these implemented. So it's a way for us to think up front what's a realistic time frame for our own capabilities, right? Because I'm realistic. I know everybody isn't, I want to have some people that are going to do these killer bang up jobs, and other people are going to struggle with the hello world in the beginning, right? I'm aware of that. But that's why I want you to think about it in the proposal up front, okay? Be realistic with your timeline and your own skill set, okay?
So like if not due to the complicated, like we mess on.
You're not gonna fail it, but I might not give you 100% either. Okay, but you have to weigh that out, right? So you get a great score on everything else, and you only get a 60% on the Android project. You can still have your A. You have to weigh that out, right? That's why I make the points distributed. Yeah, it's only 15%. You would have to get a 35%, below a 35% to get a B, to lock yourself into a B. I mean, realistically, it's probably more like a 50% because you're not going to be perfect throughout. But you can do that. If you're like, I hate writing papers, and I bet a few people that are listening hate writing papers, right? Yeah. So they're like, well, heck with that usability study. I'm going to do the bare minimum, and I'm going to be done, and if I get a 60 or a 70 on it, fine. Right? That's perfectly fine. That's why up front, you know what you need. Okay? Okay. Okay. The next thing that is due, and remember, I set these, way out. I would not recommend starting any of these the day of. You really, to be successful in this class, need to be putting in 4, 5, 6 hours every single day, right? On average. You really, truly need to be doing that, especially in the beginning, all right? Until you understand where you're at, what your own capabilities are, what your own, availability is. I promise you this, some of you are going to not like me for the next week and a half. But I promise you, when you get out and you're looking for jobs in a year, you'll be like, wow, I learned a lot in that class, and I talked about it in all my job interviews. I get that all the time. I had a guy call me up last year very upset that he had to do a usability study and there was too much work in this class. He's a UX designer now. A year later, that's what he does. Yeah. So, and he thanked me for everything that he learned. I know that it feels like a lot of work in the beginning. It's not. Just slow down, take a deep breath, and break it apart. Those proposals, the hardest part of the proposals is thinking about what you want to do and putting it on paper. That's the hardest part, right? And by the way, I forgot to tell you, you're going to submit each one of those on the discussion board, okay, by Friday. Your Android by Friday 11:59. Your Android, and then your research, and there's a discussion board for each one of them. You cannot start commenting. You cannot start the second part, which is due on the following Tuesday, next Tuesday, a week from today. You cannot start commenting on those until 7/13. That's the day after everything is due. I have some people that want to go in and they want to start commenting right away. Do not do that. You have to wait until Saturday to start going in and commenting and giving feedback to everybody. Okay? And that's going to be the same thing. You're going to go in, you're going to look at 3 of your peers, you're going to give them feedback. What are some strengths about their proposed application? How could they make it even better? Whatever. What are some weaknesses? Give them feedback. It's way too big. Think of the time frame. Are you sure your skill set is appropriate for this? Have you done the research? Are you sure there's enough research out there? I'm thinking of the research presentation, right? Is there enough research out there on your topic? I don't see that you have any peer-reviewed papers here. Are you sure you've researched this? Citing specific issues in the summary, is it grammatically and syntactically correct? You can give feedback on that because this is, a higher level class. Do you think it's going to be too easy? Is it too ambitious? Is it just right? Why? Give additional ideas and resources. If you've done something that they're wanting to do, give them an idea. Say, hey, check out this website. This might help you out. Everybody in this class can earn an A. I do not have an imposed bell curve. You are only in competition with yourself. There. I've alleviated that. So help each other out. Give good feedback to each other and help each other out. I'll be there to help you too, but everybody can get an A. I don't care. That won't happen, but everybody can get an A.
So,
Yes?
will be in summary that if put the due date at the July 10th, that we can give the comments after July 10th, and but need to be ready by July 12th. But if the put due date at the July 12th, we can give the comments.
Again, that's one of those, I have to move that due date.
Okay.
On all the discussion boards, I can only put one due date in. I can't put 2. So we have that in there for Friday. And then I'll move it, if I remember, I'll move it to being due Tuesday of the following week. And if I don't change it, feel free to email me and ask me to move it so it's updated in your own calendars and everything.
And I saw 7th of the due date is July 13th.
Yeah, we'll go back to that. We have a couple more things that are over there. Yep, don't worry, I got you covered. All right, so we have a couple things due on July 13th then, all right, and July 14th. So all week you need to be reading. You can do it early, I don't care. I just like spreading it out for you. So on the 13th, you have Hello World Development Environment Setup, all right? And then your sampling technology, which is what we'll probably start here in a little bit. We'll kind of start getting that set up. That's going to be due as well, all right? So you want to download the Android development environment, or if you want to do the Unity, if you want to do a game, you could do that. If you know for sure that's what you're going to do, you could do that. And I want you to do literally a simple hello world, here it is, all right? So what are you going to turn in for this? I want you to turn in all your zip files, all right? I want you to turn in a Word document and the YouTube URL. What's the YouTube URL? Well, to demonstrate that you have set up your environment, you're going to create a video for me. A real brief video that's going to say, here's my development environment. You can see that it's set up. Here it is. I punch this button and it says hello world. That's it. That's all there is to it. If you want to do a calculator where you can say 1 + 1 = 2, I don't care. But literally, this is you've demonstrated that it's set up, and I know that it's set up, and you're good to go. All right? For the lamp stack that's going to be due, we're going to kind of do that together. It's going to be the same thing. We're going to get the development set up, all right? We're going to then implement it. For all of these, we're not always going to have DevOps, development operations. They're not always going to be at our backs. DevOps exist in large companies. Those are the people that create your development environment and manage your development environment. Oftentimes, you're going to have to set up your own development environment. So you always want to set aside a half an hour, an hour to understand how to set up your own environment. And every single time, do whatever equivalent of a hello world program is in that environment. Make sure you do that every single time, okay? You don't have to demonstrate it for me, but that's how you should do all these little mini, this is your first mini project, all right? So we're going to do the lamp stack. I'm not going to get into it too much, but we're going to do the lamp stack. And then all of these are going to be based on usefulness, uniqueness, development opportunities, perceived sustainability. The lamp stack, I have people all the time that are like, well, nobody uses the lamp stack anymore. Not true. PHP is still one of the heaviest used languages out there. My undergraduate students tell me all the time, nobody uses Java. It's such an ancient language. Well, that's funny because over 50% of the applications that are developed on the planet still use Java. Not JavaScript, Java. And yes, and Android Studio uses Java, absolutely, on top of that. So that makes it even nicer. You know, what's the market share? I try not to pick one of these technologies that is like some obscure, never heard of technology. I want you to sample a technology that is going to get a foothold, you know. Maybe something developed by Microsoft, by Google, by Amazon, by Twitter. They are all big producers of frameworks and development environments. So usually that's what it's going to revolve around. I'll go over the video production here in just a minute, but you want to make sure that it's 1080p so that we can watch it. And I'll show you how to change that in OBS, and you can play around with it. And don't worry, I'm not going to slam you if you get it wrong the first round. You want to make sure the public that is set to public, or you need to specifically share it with me at drmikeflynn@gmail. All right, that's where I have that. You want to double check your video is streaming. So you want to play with that setup a couple times at first. You can download OBS here. It's 100% free. On some older machines, it can use resources. All right, it accesses some specific encoders that are built into the more modern machines, and if they aren't there in hardware, it has to do it in software so it can eat some resources. So just be aware of that, and we can do other stuff as well. So deliverables. You're going to turn in a link demonstrating your site. It's got to be 5 minutes, max. And this is what I do when I grade these, by the way. I play them back at double speed, and I listen to you in the background, and I go in and I look and watch and see that you've done everything that I asked you to do. So this week it's going to be the lamp stack. When you create your video, you're going to go over everything. The way to do it is you're going to have your lamp stack open over here. And over here you'll have your code. So, for example, we'll go here. So on the left-hand side, we would have our functioning product. And on the right-hand side, you're going to have your code. I know I don't have code up here. As you demonstrate something like this page, you would have your code up over here. And you would briefly say, this is the input, this is the field set, and here it is. When I add a song in, when I add it in and I click on submit, it goes to the store songs. You bring up the code over here and you say, here is where it stores that stuff into the database. I want to show all the songs. I click on show songs, there's all the songs. Over here you show the code. On the right hand side, the code that is showing all of this. Right? There it is stored in my database. When I delete the song, I want to delete 44. Submit. There it is. There it has worked. I go over and I show the code that deletes it. Right? Again, I'm keeping it to 5 minutes. Some of these will get tough to do, so you need to decide what's the most important things to highlight. You don't have to show me every last detail of your code or the functionality of your website to demonstrate to me that you know what you're talking about, because there's other talking points in here. What are some of the other talking points? Well, after you've demonstrated that, you have that overview of your LAMP environment, talking about the setup, overview of your project working. All of these are basic, a little more than hello world programs with the sampling technology. That's all I want. Okay? Not a lot. Show some specifics of the code, discuss security risks, right? Discuss issues you had setting up the stack or the technology. Discuss any issues that you had in the coding. Discuss when you would use this particular tool. What is the LAMP stack appropriate for in solving a problem? Okay? Reinforce this by showing me 2 examples of companies that use the LAMP stack. Facebook is a huge, huge user of the LAMP stack. What had happened was when they started Facebook, they used the LAMP stack, and it grew so fast that they had no choice but to become active developers in MySQL and PHP. So they now actually actively develop PHP and MySQL. Well, it's actually Mariah, but you get the idea. So Facebook is a huge, huge, huge user of this particular stack. And there's other ones that are out there. So you just go and you kind of find a few. All right. Make sure you provide a credible source for numbers 7 and 8. And here's some useful resources to help you out with any of this if you need additional help. Okay. I want you to research the popularity of the LAMP stack or the components within it, briefly talking about it. This all takes about a half an hour to come up with these statistics. You're not to spend exorbitant amounts of time on this stuff. So are there questions about what we're going to do with the LAMP stack? Because we're going to turn this off. We're going to take a break here in a minute. But what I want to do now is I'm going to bring up this workload by week. And I want you to notice how everything is due on the same days each week. And then notice how things get better as the weeks go. All right? So readings. Right away, you need to start reading these items. All right? You need to be reading those throughout the week. Those summaries are due on Sunday. All right? The summaries for the books. Chapter 1 through 3 and 1 through 4. And then a one-page summary for the Totterdale and Flynn. Those are due by Wednesday. And the reason I want you to read those sooner than later is you have an idea of how your usability study is going to start being constructed. All right? Discussion board, Wednesday and Friday. Sampling technology due on Saturday. Under the Android application, you have that hello world and proposal, proposal, and proposal. We move into week 2. Look, the next set of readings. Start reading those right away. Summaries are due when? That's right, Sunday. Discussion board, part 1 due Wednesday, part 2 due Friday. Proposal, give feedback to everybody else by Tuesday. Bibliography, notice how I stuck that in. It's not due during week 2, it's due the following Wednesday. That's going to be a milestone. So go to week 3. Again, you guessed it. Reading, reading, summary, summary, discussion board, discussion board. Now look what sits in here. You have to develop the Android project by August the 14th. That's the last week of class. You have to do the usability study by the 9th. That's the Friday of the 5th week. You have your bibliography that will be due the 24th of that week, of the 3rd week. And then your research presentation is due by Sunday the 4th. Sampling technology due on Saturday. Week 4. See how it's like really getting easier now. Now we're dragging stuff out. You only have a little bit of reading. This will be the last week for readings and summaries. That's it. Discussion board Wednesday, second part due on Friday, secure web programming. Look at that, Android application, you're supposed to be continuing working on it. Usability study, you're continuing to work on it. Sunday the 4th is when that presentation is due. And your sampling technology. Week 5, no reading. Probably some readings for extra credit, if you want to do them. Discussion board part 1, discussion board part 2. Still working on Android, still working on usability, still working on research presentation. Now we're into the presentation. Sampling technology, voice development via Alexa or other. Saturday the 10th, the last week. Maybe extra credit readings, discussion board 1, discussion board 2. Got to finish up the development of your Android application during that 6th week because everything is done by then. You got to do sampling technology. By the way, these go together this week. The weekly discussion board and the sampling technology, they go together this week. You're going to find a technology that we haven't talked about. You're going to do a presentation. You're going to put it up on the discussion board for everybody else to give you feedback on. Now, you've had 5 sampling technologies plus another 4. Something you've picked and 3 others that your students have. We wrap that all into a discussion board, and we're done. So you can see how this first week and a half, it's really packed, but they don't have a choice, unfortunately. We have 3 big projects. That means we have 3 proposals and all the other stuff. But notice how everything's very consistent. It's always due on the same day. You can refer to this. You can refer to the syllabus. I'll put out there for the people that are watching any overall questions, and I'll ask you two that are in here, do you have any questions about the structure of the class overall? I'm hoping that I give you a warm and fuzzy feeling that it's not as bad as it looks. Absolutely.
Android application, do we need to give a documentation for it or just demonstrate?
For the Android application, if you look at the specifics, the rubric, so for that one, remember that's not going to be due until the 14th. It's way out here. All right. So if we look at the develop Android application, here's the guidelines and all of the final deliverables that you have to give me, and then here's the rubric. Okay. Pass fail for students completed video presentation highlighting their product. Right? Meaning, if you pass doing that, I'll fill this in. If you fail, if you don't give me a video presentation, I can't fill this in. Does that make sense? So part of it is student has created a self-contained Android application that's run properly with no undocumented errors. Student had leveraged multiple advanced features, and here's the question you asked. 30% of that grade is student has created a professional document which is well organized, grammatically, syntactically, and technically correct, which includes all the appropriate information about the app. So that can be screen captures, that can be your original proposal, talking about problems you had, successes you had, things that have been left out, things that haven't been implemented properly.
So for the document for Android application and study, usability study, there is no page limitation.
Whatever it takes. The question is there a page limitation on the usability study and the documentation for the Android? The answer is whatever it takes is fine. If you have 50 pages, I'm probably going to stop reading and wonder how you came up with 50 pages. But I can see for the Android, if you're keeping notes the whole way through and screen captures, it needs to look professional, however you want to organize it for the documentation, but I could see that being anywhere from 5 to 10 pages, with screen captures and stuff in there, and then you'll make your video to demonstrate the bulk of that stuff. Your documentation really for the Android only needs to be, 3 pages, couple 3 pages. Doesn't have to be very extensive because your video is going to show me most of what I need to know, right? For the usability study, usually those wind up between 10 and 20 pages. I know that's a big range, but I can't see you being able to do it in anything less than 10 pages. By the time you write the introduction and you talk about the different things that you're going to use and how you're going to do it, and then you talk about how you collected the data, and then you talk about what you discovered from what you collected, and then a conclusion. And you lay that out in a nice table or a matrix or something like that. Sounds like a lot, but it's not. But that's why you have many, 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 many weeks to do this. Many, many weeks.
And for the summarize of the textbook.
Yes.
So we just summarize the important points and the highlight portion we think, and put it in the paper.
Yes. So the question is for the summaries of the chapters, you want to only pull the most important points out of those chapters. It's 1 page per chapters, right? So the first week on Sunday for the applied usability, this isn't a summary actually. I'm sorry, I need to go over that. The Norman summary, chapter 1 through 3, that's going to be 1 page of the most important things. If it goes over a little bit, that's okay. For the applied usability example, I forgot to tell you this. Instead of doing another summary, you need to read those chapters 1 through 4, okay? And then you're going to use a programming framework, a mock-up tool, or some other method to construct a solution to an identified problem, all right? So you're going to read, you're going to go out, and you're going to find a problem, and then you're going to create a mock-up that would solve whatever the problem is.
Okay, so it's not a summary.
It's not a summary. This is meant to be a little bit more fun and a little bit more applied. Sound good? Yeah, it's not bad. So what we're going to do is, do you all have any other questions?
I think we need to download those required applications.
What I'm going to do is,
And also yesterday I tried the ones you posted
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I cannot get into it. I mean,
Well, if you're in here, just download it from here. I'll show you where to get it.
okay.
Do you have a
I
little
have already downloaded. I mean,
the VMware stuff?
the VMware I have already downloaded 1 year ago, so I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, you may have to put a new key in. You might have to obtain a new key. It's only a 1-year key.
Oh, I also downloaded
Okay.
the VM VirtualBox.
Give me 1 second. I'm going to go ahead and I want to stop the video because nobody else has any questions up there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take a break and we'll come back and we'll do other stuff.
Okay.
Okay. Do you want to see vid? Let's. I'll do VidGrid in a minute.